The sound of breaking glass echoed through the cafe as Maya's trembling hand dropped her coffee cup. The man she had loved for 3 years, the one she had defended before everyone, looked at her with cold, empty eyes. "You're not worthy of my life," Daniel said, his voice calm but sharper than a blade. The laughter from nearby tables faded. It felt like the air itself had frozen around her. Maya's heart pounded so hard she could barely breathe. She wanted to believe he was joking, that the man who once promised forever hadn't just destroyed her with a sentence. But his face carried no trace of love, only arrogance. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She stood slowly, her body shaking, yet her voice steady. "One day you'll remember these words, Daniel. And that day, I won't be the same woman you broke today." People turned their heads, watching her walk away, but she didn't care. Every step felt heavy, like dragging her heart through shattered dreams. Outside, the rain poured, masking her silent tears. Maya didn't know how she would rebuild her life, but somewhere deep inside, something small and fierce had awakened. It whispered through her pain, "You will rise again." Weeks passed, but Daniel's words refused to fade. They echoed in Maya's mind like a wound that wouldn't close. She left the city that night, carrying nothing but a suitcase and the shattered pieces of her pride. The small town she moved to was quiet. Too quiet at first. But its silence helped her breathe again. She found work at a local art studio, painting for clients who never knew her story. Each brushstroke became a release, a way to pour out the pain that still clung to her heart. Yet even as she began to rebuild, the memories of that cafe lingered. Sharp and cold, every morning, she woke before sunrise, walked by the river, and promised herself she would become someone who needed no one's approval. The villagers admired her kindness, but they didn't know the storm she carried inside. She worked long hours, took evening classes, and slowly turned her brokenness into strength. Sometimes she stared at her reflection and whispered, "He was wrong about me." It became her quiet prayer, her fuel. Somewhere far away, Daniel was still climbing the ladder of success, unaware that the woman he once called unworthy was rising in ways he would never imagine. One cold morning, Maya found a letter slipped under the door of the art studio. It was from a gallery in the city inviting her to showcase her paintings, her first real chance to be seen beyond the small town. Her hands trembled as she read it, remembering the days she had doubted herself, the nights she had cried alone, wondering if she would ever be more than what Daniel had called her. She took a deep breath and smiled softly. Maybe this was life's quiet way of saying, "Keep going." The following weeks were a blur of colors, long nights, and sleepless hope. She poured her soul into every painting, each one telling a story of loss, courage, and rebirth. When the exhibition opened, the crowd's applause filled the hall, and for the first time, Maya felt proud of her scars. Reporters asked about her inspiration, and she simply said, "Pain teaches you how to create beauty." Her words spread online, touching thousands. Meanwhile, miles away, Daniel sat in his office, scrolling through his phone when her name appeared on the screen. Maya Reyes, Rising Artist of the Year. For a moment, he froze. The woman he once dismissed had become someone the world now admired. And deep within, something began to stir, a feeling he had long forgotten. Daniel couldn't escape her name anymore. It was everywhere, on magazine covers, in interviews, in art blogs praising her courage and vision. Each time he saw her smile in a photograph, a strange mix of pride and regret twisted in his chest. Late at night, he would scroll through her social media, pausing on the paintings that once might have been inspired by him. But what hurt most wasn't her success, it was how peaceful she looked without him. For the first time in years, Daniel began to feel the emptiness behind his wealth and position. His office, once his kingdom, now felt like a cage of his own making. Maya, meanwhile, was invited to speak at an art charity event. Dressed in a flowing silver gown, she stood under bright lights, her voice calm, her presence graceful. She shared how failure and rejection had become her greatest teachers, how she learned to find purpose in pain. The audience rose in applause, many with tears in their eyes. What she didn't know was that Daniel sat in the back row, hidden among strangers, his eyes glistening. As she spoke, he felt a heaviness in his heart, the weight of every cruel word he had once spoken. For the first time, he wished he could turn back time. That night after the event, rain poured endlessly over the city. Daniel sat in his car outside the venue, watching the lights fade as people left. He wanted to go to her, to speak, to apologize, but fear held him frozen. The man who once thought he was untouchable now trembled like a child. Days turned into weeks, and his health began to falter. Sleepless nights, endless stress, and guilt gnawed at him until his body finally gave up. One morning he collapsed in his office during a meeting. The next thing he remembered was the sterile white of a hospital room and the beeping of a heart monitor beside him. News of his illness spread quietly. When Maya heard about it from a mutual friend, she froze. For hours she stared at her phone, torn between anger and compassion. The memories of that cafe came rushing back, the humiliation, the heartbreak. Yet so did the image of the man who once made her believe in love. That night she couldn't sleep. Something inside her whispered that forgiveness wasn't weakness. It was strength. The next morning she took a train to the city she once ran from, her heart pounding as the skyline came into view. She didn't know what she would say, or if he would even recognize her. But she knew one thing: some chapters deserved closure, not revenge. The hospital corridors smelled faintly of antiseptic and quiet regret. Maya hesitated at the door, her reflection trembling in the glass window beside his bed. Daniel looked smaller now, fragile, with tired eyes that carried the weight of all his mistakes. The confident man she once knew was gone. As he turned his head and saw her standing there, his eyes widened, disbelief and emotion flooding his face. "Maya," he whispered, his voice breaking. She stepped closer, calm yet distant, her heart pounding but her spirit steady. "You once told me I wasn't worthy," she said softly, her eyes glistening. "And now?" Tears rolled down his cheeks as he reached for her hand, his fingers trembling. "I was blind," he murmured. "You were always the one with strength, with light. I see it now. I'm sorry." His words came like a confession years too late. Maya's lips quivered, not out of anger, but sorrow. She didn't come for revenge, and she came for peace. "I forgave you long before this," she said gently, placing her hand over his. "Because I had to free myself to live." Daniel closed his eyes, relief and pain blending into silence. Maya stood there for a long moment, then turned toward the window where dawn light touched the sky. The chapter that once broke her was finally complete. She walked away, not as the woman he left behind, but as the woman she was always meant to become.